So Susan, we're starting to make a habit out of this. We're
Yes,
talking
we are.
on a regular basis now and sharing some content with our audience, our fans, if you will.
Yes, it's turning into a podcast.
It is. It's going great. Lots of exciting stuff. The book's coming out in the first quarter of 2023. And then you and I were just talking a little bit about a gentleman named Jack Canfield. And Jack Canfield, for those of us or those of you out there who may not know who he is, he wrote the whole series of Chicken Soup for the Soul books. So there's some great content out there. But the quote that Susan and I want to talk about today is, everything you want is on the other side of fear. And I'm just looking at the quote in my second monitor here, but everything you want is on the other side of fear. Pretty powerful statement.
Yes.
What are your thoughts when you hear that, Susan?
Well, a couple of things. Everybody does seem to be afraid to get sober, myself included. What would life look like? What would I do with my time? Who am I going to be spending time with? Where will sobriety take me? And I think you have this idea, this, fear of missing out, or, FOMO, as the kids say. You have this fear of missing out. And I think what people don't realize is you're actually missing out by being addicted. You're missing out on the career that you want. You're missing out on your children. You're missing out on a healthy lifestyle. All the money that you're spending on your addiction, you're missing out on vacations. You're missing out on life. And as they say, addiction is giving up one thing for everything. So when you're in active addiction, you're giving up all your hopes and dreams for your addiction of choice. So the scales of justice are very uneven. You have your addiction of choice, and everything else you ever wanted has gone away. Or you put that addiction in remission, and now that one thing goes away and everything you ever wanted comes into focus.
It is amazing when that happens. And
yes,
when you think about that, when I think about this with all the various people that I coach, one thing that you can't coach is that desire internally, that burning desire, that purpose. And somehow, whether it's your first rock bottom, your second rock bottom, your third rock bottom, you have to face your fear and dig your heels in. I'm digging my heels into my carpet right now. And you've got to face your fear and move forward. And like you said, you're giving up everything. The scales are unbalanced. You're giving up everything for that one thing that you think is going to bring you happiness.
Right.
And really, it's taking everything away.
Yes. And this doesn't apply. My shirt says Wicked Soba because I am originally from New England and I am completely sober. But we have to keep in mind that there are plenty of other addictions. Gambling has skyrocketed in this country. Online shopping has skyrocketed. So, plenty of people, as they say, addictions can take you to jails, institutions, and death. And plenty of people have gotten in over their head with gambling, I'm sure, and have committed suicide. I had a family member many years ago who married a gambling addict, and he actually put the deed to the house up. He actually gambled away his house. So he still, they still ended up homeless. So just because you're not ingesting a substance doesn't mean you're not giving up everything for one thing.
Wow. Yes. Because we always focus on, or we tend to focus, society tends to focus on the substances, the alcohol, the drugs, the fentanyl, everything that's out there. But there are so many other addictions that people are struggling with. So you mentioned some of those: shopping, gambling, pornography is just a huge one. And that really distorts your view of everything and really
Yeah.
and ruin your
Right. I would imagine with any of those addictions,
Mhm,
it's going to strain your relationships with your significant other, your
mhm,
parents, your friends. They're going to be tired, of you, prioritizing your addiction over them. And as I said, it doesn't have to be something that you're ingesting. It's a mindset. The step one of breaking the chains is focus. And when you're addicted, your entire focus is on your addiction. It's just addiction hijacks your brain and makes you think that that is the most important thing and that it will solve your problems. And it's just
exactly,
masking your problems. It's a
exactly,
whatever your addiction is, it's a very poor coping mechanism for whatever you're going through.
exactly. It is a poor coping mechanism because it's a vicious circle. You're going to numb yourself. That rescuer with the alcohol or whatever your addiction behavior is becomes only medicates you for so long. But
Right,
the problem is still there, and it becomes a vicious cycle.
right.
You're kind of a hamster on the wheel, just constantly
Well,
spinning and spinning.
and so your tolerance will build up no matter what you're addicted to, so that when you first start using, you'll get a euphoric high. And then when you're done uh, participating in your addiction, you'll come back down to normal. And
Mhm.
then you'll keep wanting that euphoric high. But unfortunately, the bar keeps getting lowered. And eventually, you'll have to use your addiction just to feel normal. Now all of a sudden you're not normal if you didn't participate in your addiction today. So it's literally, as you can see my finger, it's a roller coaster. You
Mhm.
go up and then you go down, which everybody knows is rock bottom, and any addiction can take you to rock bottom.
Absolutely. And as you said, the bar continues to get lowered because when some of our early conversations together, all of a sudden, if I remember correctly, you were talking about how, well, drinking at 11 o'clock in the morning became okay.
Right, right. Exactly. And then, drunk you is your own best friend. So you're telling yourself, oh, I don't really have a problem. As we've talked about at leasters, you will point to the worst addict, that you've ever known and say, well, at least I'm not like them, not realizing that there are people looking at you going, well, at least I'm not like her.
We laugh, but that is so true.
Right.
When you are, because you have blinders on, so you're not
Yes.
looking
That's a
at,
very good way of putting it. You have blinders on. You, again, tunnel vision focus
yep.
towards your addiction. Those blinders. And again, I love that analogy because everything, your career goals, your grandbabies, your hobbies, that was one of the early signs for me that I knew,
Mhm.
because I am like the hobby queen. I can scrapbook and I can quilt and I can read books and I can hike in the park. And when I noticed all my hobbies were disappearing, that was a very early indication. We talk about red flags in relationships, but there should be, we should make a list of red flags to look for in your addiction. And one
Mhm.
of the red flags that your coping mechanism is taking control is that you no longer have time for your hobbies.
Mm.
So,
That's true. That's true. Those things that used to bring you joy, and
yes,
you're not
exactly.
doing those anymore. Not just the hobbies too, but all of a sudden you may wind up in a situation where all those people that were positive around you, those positive associations,
Yes,
may say, I can't be around Susan anymore or Joe anymore or whoever it is.
exactly.
So now
So,
it's a downward spiral because now you're just surrounded by a lot of people that are going to enable you to continue your addiction.
and it's that old saying, birds of a feather flock together. So if you notice that 9 out of the 10 people that you're hanging out with have an addiction problem, you probably have an addiction problem. If 9 out of the 10 people that you're hanging out with are completely broke, you're going to be the next broke one. And if 9 out of 10 people you're hanging out with, are, you know what, I guess, are not going anywhere and don't want to change, that means you're not going anywhere and you're not going to change either. So
Absolutely.
you have to be careful of the company you keep.
Absolutely. So embracing your fear. Everything you want is on the other side of fear. That first step, like I mentioned before, is digging yourself in. Dig your heels in and say enough is enough.
Yeah.
Secondly, reach out to a support mechanism. Reach out to one of us. At the end of the video, we're going to have our websites and then our email addresses up. But reach out to Susan, reach out to me. Let's talk about your situation after the holidays. Well, maybe even before the holidays. Susan and I haven't talked about this, but I'm doing this on the fly right now. Maybe we'll be able to get a scheduled webinar for anyone interested in talking about some strategies to stay sober, some strategies to take those first steps, and then
Yes.
introduce you to the Breaking the Chains program.
Yes, and I would recommend that if you are planning on taking those steps to get sober, that you consult a doctor. You tell your, you know, depending on your age, are you going to be talking to your parents or a significant other? Depends on where you're at in your life. But you need to that accountability, that once you start telling people this is part of your plan, you think that that's a bad idea, but it's actually a very good idea because they will help keep you accountable.
Absolutely. And in your mind,
Once,
you're going to keep yourself accountable because
yes, exactly.
you're going to
Because
say, hey, I put this out there, so now I got to either put up or shut up.
exactly. And that's how I knew I was committed to sobriety, is when I was able to have enough sobriety that I could post on social media that, you know, this, and I would say, you know, treat uh putting your addiction in remission like an online purchase. Try it for 90 days, and if you don't like it, if your life does not start improving in 90 days, you are more than welcome to live in misery. But I think you'll notice that even in 90 days your life will improve. You will have more money. You will there's just no other way around it. You're
Absolutely.
giving up one thing to get everything. The scales of justice will tip, and you will go out of a victim into a challenger or a creator.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is a little teaser. So we're going to talk more about that once we get the recovery workshop scheduled. So if you're part of our Facebook group, it's Breaking the Chains Addiction Recovery Group. You'll find it on Facebook. Go out to soberinsightcoach.com for Susan's website. Go to DPS for Life for my website. dpsforlife.com stands for Developing Positive Skills for Life, because that's what we're trying to do, is develop positive skills for life, for work, for everything. One thing I want to make sure before we end that I talk about, because Susan touched on it. We work with adults. So what we're geared for is adults. When you have someone who is a teenager, there are plenty of resources out there. We could help you find the resources, whether it's counselors with school, therapists, etc. But what Susan said is very important, because we mentioned it before. This is holistic. The coaching doesn't work if you're not taking care of your mental health with a therapist or a psychiatrist, with proper medication and a healthy lifestyle.
Yes.
It's no substitute for that. So with that, everyone have an amazing day. And Susan and I are going to be talking to you again real soon. So stay tuned. So long.